we can get started. I just put on the recording. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our non athletics careers in sports session. My name is Surbhi Kumar, and I am the founder of the firm The Dream Catchers. We are an education consulting firm based out of Mumbai. So, I'll start with telling you a little bit about the Dream Catchers. Our mission is to assist students in realizing their dream of obtaining quality and best fit education. And I'm sure you would be wondering that how do we do that? So for grade 9th and 10th students, the immediate need is kind of selecting the right subject combinations, right streams. And for grade 11th and 12th, it's primarily the course and college selection. So what we start with is something which is called as a psychometric assessment test, wherein we try to understand the student's aptitude, their interest area from a work standpoint, their personality traits. And on the basis of these three dimensions, a detailed career fitment report gets generated, and that's a starting point for us. So we try to use the method of elimination and whatever other careers the student has considered so far, the research which is required to be done to get a better understanding of each of the career clusters which are kind of aligned or seems to be aligned at this point of time for a student. We do this through our individualized and personalized counseling. And wherever needed, we create a detailed action plan for the student, both on the academic and the non-academic front. We also provide our services in the higher education admission guidance space, covering both the overseas and Indian universities. So wherever needed for higher education admission, we do provide services on profile assessment and profile building, or rather like elevating your profile, keeping in mind your unique strengths per se. Country and course shortlisting, if you are looking for studying overseas, best fit college mapping, letter of recommendations and statement of purpose guidance, scholarship guidance, interview preparation, visa guidance, and so on and so forth. So I hope it helps you understand a little bit about the Dream Catchers and our services. Now, let me give you a sense of our lineup today. So this session would be close to an hour-long session. So I'll begin with giving you a glimpse of the non-athletic careers in sports. We'll also give you some information around the colleges and institutions in India and across the globe where like sports education is provided, recruiters in India and across the globe. Just keep in mind that this will be an overview. That means we will not dive deeper into the details, but we just want to provide you with some basic information, and then you can take it one step ahead, do your own research. And if you need any further assistance, we are happy to help. The highlight of our session today is Fireside Chat with Jonathan Rego, who is Head of Corporate Services at Mumbai City Football Club and also a seasoned sports consultant. We'll try to keep some time aside for Q&A. Now, if you want to make the best out of this session, I'll encourage each of you to keep posting your questions in the Q&A box or chat box, and we'll try to pick it during the Fireside Chat session itself, or we will do it in the end, depending upon the time we have in hand. Okay, I hope now this really sets the expectation, what you can kind of expect in 1 hour as such. Okay. So I know this is a Sunday morning. All of you who are here might be sports enthusiasts. So just let's start with this small quiz. There are 2 questions on your screen. So I'm just looking for all of you to like read it and respond on the chat window itself. I'll just keep it open for maybe a couple of seconds, and then we can move on to the session. Can see few responses. Come on. There's so many of you, still only just few of you have responded. Okay. Okay, so those of you who have responded, you are correct. So the first one is, it was actually streamed on all of the mentioned platforms, and the Indian sports industry is worth $2 billion and rather like progressing at an exponential speed. It's the correct statement. With that, let's move on to our next slide. So here is the glimpse of non-athletic careers for you. Let's talk about sports management and what kind of careers you can look into it. You could be a team manager. You could be a social media manager for an individual athlete or for a franchisee per se. You could be a part of a sports agency which is taking care of sponsorships and other ancillary activities. You could be an event planner taking care of like city tournaments or like bigger tournaments as well. You could think of building a career in terms of sports marketing. You could be involved in the grassroots development, which is kind of helping in creating the pipeline of athletes, kind of identifying the talent through different local tournaments and local competitions as such. Now, important thing to keep in mind is like sports as an industry or different sports companies are just like any other business entity. So what that means, there will be a lot of corporate roles in different functions. It could be like HR, tech, operations, legal, shared services, whatever you can think of from a corporate angle itself. Now, other segment or other cluster is sports sciences. So if you are kind of inclined towards biology or to an extent medical or paramedical field, you can think of being a sports physiotherapist, sports doctor, sports nutritionist, sports psychologist, kinesiologist, or even being an exercise specialist. So whatever is required to keep our talented athletes in good health, they can put their best foot forward when it comes to competitive games or even like maintaining their health. That's what in the arena of sports sciences you can think of, right? Sports journalism, public relations, may even for a sports person or even for a franchisee, being a sports show producer or editor, being a generalist or a reporter, and be it on any medium, it could be TV, radio, YouTube, whatever. Being a sports broadcaster or an anchor, being a content creator when it comes to sports as an industry, and again, multimedia. Being a market researcher, where there are like a lot of insights which are required, and that's where market researcher can create surveys, orchestrate those surveys, get back the insights from it, and help in making some informed decisions for the management. Okay. Sports coaching and education. Yes, you could be a sports coach. You could be a physical education teacher at a school. You could be an umpire or a referee, and there are specific courses around it. If you want to be in higher ed academia, you could be a professor of sports management. Then is sports engineering, sports analytics. It's becoming a very, very vast field in itself, and even like to an extent high paying too. So people who are enthusiastic about math, statistics, data science, computer science, they can kind of do a lot of number crunching, again, when it is required from an athlete performance standpoint or from a tournament or whatever data you kind of see reflecting on the screen when the tournament or a game is going on. That's all part of sports analytics. Sports technology with augmented and virtual reality coming into play, there are a lot of roles in this space as well. Okay, moving on to esports industry now. It's a giant industry in itself. So it's basically online competitive gaming, right? Definitely it includes various roles besides just being like an tournament player who is similar to an athlete in a physical sports. Other roles are again business or management side, creative roles, being a tournament organizer, finance, marketing, game designer, producers, so on and so forth. Now, the last segment being sports law. And again, it is like after your law degree or LLB degree, you can take a specialization in sports law where you can help in creating, and with this degree, like help in creating the contracts for individual players, for even for franchisees and whatever legal angle is involved, right? Now, just keep in mind that even when we are talking about non-athletics careers in sports, it is primarily suited for those individuals who have deep interest in sports, right? So they will be kind of breathing, living, eating sports and sports conversation, right? It's just that they might not be athletes themselves. Okay, I hope it helps to kind of give you a picture what kind of careers are there. Now, when we talk about colleges and institutes worldwide, in India, we have a couple of good institutes offering sports management. And during the fireside chat conversation with Jonathan, we'll also try to understand what's the best way to approach this career. through a formal education or through something else, right? But let's park that for later. So other institutes are Global Institute of Sports Business, BOS University, JSW Sports, Royal Schools of Business, which offer few programs in collaboration with the Deccan University of Australia. Even worldwide, as you can see on your screen, these are top 10, 12 colleges within the sports education, primarily sports management. These are like top 10, 12 among the QS world rankings as such. Okay. So moving on, when we talk about recruiters, again, what I kind of touched upon in terms of careers or industries, when we talk about professional sports teams or leagues, IPL, it's a household name these days, right? Mumbai City Football Club, globally NBA, NFL, sports governing bodies, cricket body in India itself, BCCI, All India Football Federation, International Olympic Committee, FIFA. Now, when we talk about sports marketing, PR, and sponsorship agencies like Baseline, so Baseline definitely provides this, but they are also providing other bundled services, which is like on event management side. But these are some of the companies which may help you understand what kind of recruiters are there. Media and broadcasting space, ESPN, Eurosport, Sportsworks, sports facilities and event management, Rise, which is a very known name, AG Sports. When we talk about sports analytics and technology companies, Sports Interactive here in India, Scoreability globally. So I hope it gives you some understanding of what kind of recruiters you can think of. And now you can go ahead and check out their websites and see what kind of career posts are they putting up there. Okay, so with that, let's move on to the highlight of our session today. So Jonathan has already joined us. I'm so sorry, my video was off. I just realized. I'm so sorry. Okay. I hope all of you can see me now. Just put a thumbs up. I wonder no one mentioned that to me. Okay. Okay. Hey, Jonathan. Okay. A very warm welcome to you, Jonathan. Thank you for taking out time today for the session. You are on mute.
Hear me now?
Yeah, very well.
Thank you, Surbhi. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for choosing to spend Sunday morning with me.
Okay, so for everyone's benefit, I'll just start with a short intro of you. So Jonathan holds more than 16 years of experience within the sports industry. He currently heads corporate service at Mumbai City Football Club, and is a seasoned sports consultant. He has vast experience in breadth of areas within the sport industry, ranging from athlete management, sports event management, professional team logistics, and sports website content management, and such other things as well. It's just a brief intro. So welcome once again. I think we can start with the fireside chat now.
Sure, Surbhi. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, so here goes my first question to you. Can you share your career journey within the sports industry and what really inspired you to kind of pivot in this industry, given you had worked in a different industry earlier?
Sure. So I think it's interesting that you use the word pivot, because I've always wanted to work in sport, but the opportunity to just out of college was to get a job and earn some money, because I wanted to step away from taking money from my parents and be independent. So I think that's the reason I ended up taking a job. This is when I was 20, which is, these were what they were called BPO jobs, back office processing of centers. And I ended up getting a job from campus recruitment by HP, Hewlett Packard, who still has a very large campus in Bangalore, but I got recruited by them. And if I'm being honest, the job per se was very meaningless. It was largely typing in data into a computer, and they were boring 8 hours. But because we were young and a lot of other young people were there, the environment was exciting. So the job was boring, but the environment was exciting. And
Okay.
so then I wanted to, I essentially wanted to work in sport. And at that point of time, because I did not have another Jonathan Rego to listen to, and to be clear, also that time there were barely any careers in sport. There were maybe 4 or 5 types of careers in sport, not like the slide that you shared with us. But
Mhm.
one of them was sports presenting. And I've always been somebody who likes to MC. I like to take the mic on stage, and that comes from my parents, who were both MCs themselves, and they did it
Mhm.
as a hobby. They didn't do it as a profession, but they were
Okay.
really good. They really, I got that ability to speak confidently from them.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, I could become a sports presenter. And there was again no sports presenter course in India at that point of time. The only thing that was close to being a sports course in India at that point of time was a sports marketing course,
Mm-hmm.
part
Okay.
of the larger marketing course at Mudra Institute of Communications in Ahmedabad, MICA.
Okay.
For
Micah.
those of you who don't know, MICA is one of the top, it is the top marketing institute in the country,
True.
educational institute. So for MICA, I had to write the CAT to get into MICA, and then after you write the CAT, you have to write the MAT, which is the MICA aptitude test. So
Mm-hmm.
I wrote both. Uh, I did. I didn't do too well in the CAT. I got 75%. I got the 75th percentile, but interestingly enough, sorry, I got 76 percentile. But interestingly enough, to apply for the MAT, you needed to get above 95% in English,
Okay.
because English, math, and English, quant, and logic. You needed to get above 95% in English, and you needed to get above 75% overall. And in no subject were you allowed to get below 50.
Okay.
That was the breakup to write to math. And I actually ended up getting that. So I got 98 in English, 98th percentile in English. I got 76 percentile overall. And I think logic and quant were about 52, 53 approximately or so. So I met
Okay.
the criteria. So I wrote the exam, applied for it, but I didn't get in because at that point of time, I wanted to do sports presenting, and unfortunately, because I did not undergo, training with an expert such as yourself, I just spoke what was in my heart at the interview, right?
Okay.
And it came out in the interview that I want to be a sports presenter, but in the people who were listening to me, the interviewers, they were like, "This is a sports marketing course," So
Mm-hmm.
there
Okay.
was a risk, So it also highlights the role of educators such as yourself, right? To explain to a young boy or a young girl, how do you frame your responses in an interview for an MBA admission, for example, right? Or higher
True.
education.
True.
Post that, I then took up a bank job,
Mm-hmm.
because I had gone back to Abu Dhabi, which is where I was born and raised.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of my childhood and my school life there. And then I worked in a bank for a couple of years. But again, the same thing, right? The job was largely meaningless. At least the role that I was playing. It was again
Okay.
very data entry based. I was making decent money, very, very
Mm-hmm.
decent. Um, for somebody who was 21, 22. But the work was meaningless. I liked my team. I liked the fact that I was back in Abu Dhabi, because that time my parents were still living there. But
Okay.
I hated the job, and I wanted to look for places to work in the sports industry. So I kept looking for companies, and at that point of time, there were two really big companies only. And imagine the sheet that you shared today is pretty crazy, and there are probably 2,000+ companies, 2,000+ companies registered in India, sports companies. That time there were probably two.
Mm-hmm.
There were more than that, but the others were largely making equipment, and they were making apparel. So
Okay.
they were more production companies, or factories, for lack of a better word. But from a
Mm-hmm.
sport management standpoint of view, there were just two companies. There was IMG and there was Globo Sport.
Mm-hmm.
So I chased Globo Sport for 1 year. I sent them emails every day. I would call them every day. And then I happened to be in India at some point of time for a friend's wedding, for my closest friend's wedding. And it happened in Bangalore, and Globo Sport had an office in Bangalore. So I said, I've been calling them for a year, and they were very kind. They heard me out. They waited for me. They listened to me, but they said, unfortunately, we don't have an opening. Then I just
Mm-hmm.
showed up at their office one day.
Okay.
And to my luck, they say universe conspires in your favor.
Yeah.
To my luck, a week before I went to visited their office, somebody had quit from the sports department, and they had joined
Okay.
actually they had joined the Commonwealth Games, which happened in 2010. So this is what I'm talking about is in 2008, by the way.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so and then I got a meeting, fortunately, with the CEO of the sports department, and he met me. He liked what I do, but I was a fresher completely. So he said, salary is not going to be great, especially you coming from the Gulf and earning a banker's salary, coming to India and earning a starting salary. I said, for me, fortunately, the money really doesn't matter. There's no pressure from my parents, and I think I can make it work, right? I feel like I can succeed in this space. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a terrible salary. I could live in Bombay. I could rent a flat. I could eat food. I could live a basic life. But it wasn't anyway. It was probably 1/3 or 1/5 of what my banker's salary was, and that too in a foreign currency, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I took the chance upon myself. And
Mm-hmm.
since then, I worked in global sport for 2 years, where I worked with the NBA. So it's the National Basketball Association. For those of you all who are not aware, it is the biggest basketball league in the world. It is like the IPL is for cricket, the NBA is for basketball in the world.
Yeah.
So the NBA had just come to India, so our company was helping them on ground execute all their on ground events, do some marketing, so on and so forth. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Post that, I also was managing a few athletes because Global Sport managed a few athletes. So there was Saina Nehwal, Sania
Wow.
Mirza, there was Dinesh Karthik at that point of time, there was Deepika Palikal. And interestingly enough, we both managed Dinesh Karthik and Deepika Palikal. This was well before, they ended up becoming a couple and starting a family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we managed a bunch of athletes. So I did a lot of work in that space. Post that, I joined a company called Quan. I largely did the same thing because Quan was a group of people who had left Global Sport and felt like they wanted to start their own company.
Got
So
it.
I worked in the sports department there, and I largely did the same thing there. But there, my role became a little more complex. So we did events with squash, we did golf events, we did a lot of football events. But we largely stayed in the events space. Post that, the Kwan used to manage Ranbir Kapoor, and
Okay.
Ranbir Kapoor had then. This was so I joined Kwan in 2010. So from 2010 to 2014, I was with Kwan, and then in 2014, Ranbir Kapoor, along with Mr. Bimal Parekh, had purchased the Mumbai City FC, Mumbai City franchise for the Indian Super League. For those
Mm-hmm.
not aware of it, the Indian Super League is like the IPL but for football. So the ISL is for football, and because Ranbir was managed by Kwan, the Kwan sports team got a chance to pitch to manage the business of the sports club, and we had never done managing a sports club at that point of time. And we
Okay.
pitched against a couple of other companies, and we managed to win the pitch. Definitely helped. So we won the pitch. We then started to manage Mumbai City FC. So that's when I moved into Mumbai City FC. So I worked for Mumbai City FC for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
That I joined a company that helped NBA. By then, I'd obviously built a relationship with the NBA. I was very comfortable with the NBA India team.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew my strength was content, right? I was doing a lot of events, which was great because that was one of the opportunities available at that point of time. But content was not a big deal at that point of time. It was
Okay.
largely, but content was getting bigger. So the NBA called me and said, "Can you help us launch NBA.com for India?" So when you had
Oh,
prior to prior to 20 prior to 2016, if you had typed in nba.com in India from an Indian IP address, you would get directed to the global website.
okay.
But from 2016 to 2021, they built, sorry, 2020, they essentially built an India specific website. So there
Okay.
was content which was, catering towards Indian fans. The more popular players were obviously highlighted a little more. So I helped create that website, design the content strategy, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 6 months. I launched the project, and then unfortunately my mother fell quite ill, so I had to quit my job in Bombay, and then I moved back to Mangalore to be with her and with her and my dad, and kind of help her nurse herself back to health. So post that, I did that for about a year. After that, I started my own company because I was sitting at home, and I wasn't really keen on coming back to a city because I wanted to spend more time with my mother. So I started a startup from my home with a very, very close friend of mine. We started a company called Nation of Sport. And Nation of Sport actually is a long form journalism website where the idea is that there were so many great stories in sport, but you only hear about them when somebody had succeeded, right? So they won a medal, or they won a race, or they won a tournament or a game, or they beat some player. So it was always after the story happened, you'd hear about this player. But Indian sports has a lot of lot of stories that are in the background. And we said, my friend who became my partner and I, we love reading long form articles. So, 5,000 words, 8,000 words, 10,000 words. And we felt that the Indian media space did not have enough of those. There were a few, but they would probably come once a week or maybe once every, fortnight.
Okay.
We said, well, there's enough of stories to have one every day, right? So we started the company, we bootstrapped it, we even raised a small amount of funding, and then after that, unfortunately, there was a disagreement between us and our investor on how the company should move forward. So we chose to, shut down the company. And post that was when COVID hit. So for 4 years for 3 years of COVID, I actually was a freelancer. So I did a lot of freelance content consultancy. And in 2022 December is when so I'd done 3 years of content writing. So 20, 21, 22, and then 22 December is when the CEO of Mumbai City, who was my colleague at Mumbai City FC at the start, and he was head of operations there. He had risen to become CEO of Mumbai City FC. So he reached out to me and he said, I've got a role for you, which is something like a jack of all trades, but king of none. It's services role. And I never done a role like that, but it was an interesting role that when I read about it, right? In general, I did my own research. So it took me a month or so to say yes to him, but I finally said yes to him. So in January 2023, I chose to move back to Mumbai and join Mumbai City FC, and I've been with Mumbai City FC ever since. Sorry for the long answer, but this one.
I think.
Sorry for interrupting, but it's something that will get revealed as we speak, that actually people who join the sports industry anywhere between 12 to 15 years prior, they all have a very unique story, a very similar story, because we've all done different things because the sports industry was not organized. So everybody has worn multiple hats, everybody's jumped multiple times. It's only now in the last 5 years you've actually started to see, because the sports industry is taking shape, you're starting to see people stick on for 5 years, 6 years, 8 years. So that's the reason why the context is long.
Thank you so much. I think it gives us a very good understanding of your career trajectory per se. And I could take out two key learnings from this. So one is, where there is a will, there is always a way, right? So that's how it happened for you. And secondly, having good connections, or like network, but like realistic network or valued network, can help you be at the right place at the right time kind of situation as well. So that's how I would like to summarize what you have told so far. So thank you for that insight. With that, let me move on to the next question. So yeah, definitely in the start of the session, I kind of covered what are the different non-athletic careers within the sports industry. But it would be helpful to get an understanding from you and our young students, and like a couple of parents have also joined today. What kind of non-athletic careers are there, and how they should go about kind of finding their own best fit within it?
Sure. So, I think what we can do, if you don't mind, Surbi, if you can go back to that slide, I think that's a fantastic slide, and it covers a lot of the answer that you've done all the heavy lifting on that answer. So, kudos to your depth of research. So, again, and this brings me back to my point. I wish I had dream catchers when I was 18, or when I was 14. Life would have been a lot more clearer as such. So
kind of you to say so, Jonathan.
Yeah. And So you've hit the nail on the head, right? Which is 95, 9, I would say not 95. I would say 99% of people in India who don't work in the sports industry, right? If you're not connected to the sports industry, you don't have a relative working in the sports industry. 99% of those people think that in sports there are just four careers. So they think you have to become a professional athlete, they think you have to become a coach, they think you can become a physiotherapist or a doctor, and they think you can become a presenter because that's what you see on screen, right? So 99% of the people think there are just these four careers. Now, are these four careers available? Yes, of course. Not necessarily the professional athlete, because for that, by the age of 15 or 16, you have some clarity on whether you're going to become a professional athlete or not. Because if you've missed the bus at 15, 16, unfortunately, the level of competitiveness at the professional level is so high. If you've missed the bus at 15, 16, it sounds harsh, but it's better to have a reality check and say, okay, I'm not going to be a professional athlete. Let me figure out what my backup plan is, right? So are there coaches in the sports industry? Yes, like you mentioned on your slide. Are there hosts or presenters? I don't know. I think yes, sports journalist or reporter, sports anchor, broadcaster, you've mentioned. And are there sports scientists? Like you said, like there's a whole list of them, right? So these elements are very, very well present, right? But what a lot of people need to understand, and that's where I feel like I can come in, is the sports industry is just like any other industry. You have a hotel management industry, you have a car manufacturing industry, you have food and beverage industry, you have the steel industry, or metal industry, you have the airline industry. The sports industry functions just like any other industry, which means sports companies function just like any other company. What does that mean? Just like any other company, a sports company has income, it has expenses, and its hope is to make sure that its income is a little more than its expenses because it wants to turn a profit.
True.
At the fundamental level, a sports company needs to be looked at like that, just like any other company. So when you think of careers in sport, you essentially think of what are the careers available in other industries, right? So in let's say, for example, I brought up industry, let's say the hotel industry. You need a person to sell your hotel room. So there's sales in the hotel industry, right? Similarly, you need somebody to sell sponsorships for the sports industry. So there is a sales department in the in the sports industry, right? Since you mentioned here, for example, sports marketing and sports sponsorship is a very important part. So you see your favorite player wear those jerseys, you see Dream 11, or you see Byju's, or you see Godrej, or you see Tata. This is all somebody going out there and talking to the brands and telling them, listen, why don't you associate with our sports team? These are the reasons you associate with our sports team, right? So you need somebody to sell. Similarly, and just like that, you need somebody to market. You need somebody to manage your social media. You need somebody to plan events, because sports is largely events based, right? Without the event happening or the sport happening, there's nothing else in the industry. So at the core of everything is the event and the athletes that perform in the event, right? Now, what is different from the sports industry in terms of careers that other industries don't have? So one, for example, is athlete management. Now, in most other industries, you don't have this concept of athlete management. You have it in the entertainment industry, where you manage a celebrity. So it's somewhat similar to that. But as such, you are managing the athlete, right? You're managing his or her schedule. They've got some commitments in terms of sponsors, activity that they need to do. They need to make some appearances, or they, for example, have to travel from India to some foreign country for a tournament, or they have to come back from the tournament and make sure that they've got a schedule clear for rehabilitation because maybe they had an injury. So managing all that takes a lot of effort. Until about, say, 12 years back, or maybe 15 years back, all of that work was done by the athlete, or maybe somebody in the athlete's network. So maybe their uncle or their auntie or their mother or their father or their brother or their sister, or even sometimes even their coaches, right? Now what has happened is athletes, and what used to happen is those people may or may not have been, somebody who could do this full time, because maybe they had other jobs as well, right? Maybe they had other responsibilities. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff would get lost in the middle. So an athlete manager would come in and then kind of organize everything, and he or she would be able to allow the athlete to focus only on the sport. So that's an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another example of sports, the sports industry being different, is you mentioned your sports analytics or sports technology.
Mm.
So you have analytics for the business.
Yeah.
So how many sales have we made, what is the profit on each sale, which areas are we selling most, what product is selling the most, what service is selling the most, so on and so forth. But again, coming to sport, you have the athlete that's at the center of everything. So there is
Mm-hmm.
analytics specifically for the athlete and his or her performance.
True.
So how much have they run?
Mm-hmm.
What's the consumption how much water have they consumed? What are the calories they've consumed? What is their recovery time? Where is their body generating more heat? Which means if there's more heat, means there's more activity happening there. Can you balance that? So
Mm-hmm.
that level of detailing goes into performing with extremely high elite level athletes, right?
Yeah.
Then a lot of the sports sciences that you mentioned, they are also largely based around the athlete, right? The physiotherapist who helps in rehabilitation, the physician who helps and makes sure that the athlete is healthy, a nutritionist to make sure that the athlete is eating the right kind of food, a psychologist to make sure that mentally the athlete is on track. In fact, nobody was talking about sports psychology until Abhinav Bindra, the man who brought us our first gold medal, spoke about it and said, everybody thinks, oh, this guy is a gold medalist, he's the world's best athlete and he has it all sorted and he's figured it out and he's, everything is hunky dory. And then a few years later, he comes out and he openly talks about it with no shame at all, that the biggest reason I managed to win that gold medal was because I focused on working with a mindset coach and a psychologist to help me get over some of the blocks that I had. Because a lot of people who are maybe too young here to remember, maybe some parents will remember, um, he was coming back from injury, so he had lost all confidence in his ability to even win that medal. And
Mm.
this is all mentioned in his book, by the way. You can read his book. It's My Shot. I think it's called My Shot at History, which is a brilliant book and written very, very well. And he's a very astute thinker and a speaker. And imagine, we all think when we look at people who win at the highest level, right? Whether it's the most successful people, whether it's success in career, success in making money, success in minds, in having a great mind, or success in sport, for example, we all think these people have figured it out. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of them use the help of mindset coaches or psychologists, and this is the truth. So again, coming back to your slide, kinesiologist, right? So somebody who understands the movement. Is this athlete moving in a unique way that could potentially lead to an injury? So that you change that movement so that the athlete can avoid injury later, so that they don't
Mm-hmm.
have to miss any time, so that they can perform better, right? Yeah. So everything that you mentioned on this slide is fundamentally what forms the sports industry, right? So I think if there's one thing people can take away from this answer is, when you think of careers in the sports industry, think of the sports industry just like any other industry. And what are the careers there? Those are careers that you will have here, whether it's sports tech, whether it's, what you can say, uh, uh, computer engineering, whether it is medicine, whether it is finance, whether it is, oh, that's another thing, sorry, I didn't touch upon. Just like every other company, a sports company also needs HR, it also needs finance, it also needs legal, it needs operations, it needs all that a regular company needs. So in your
True.
head, you have to think about, okay, I want to join the sports industry. This is what I'm good at, right? I'm good at numbers, or I'm good at people management, or I'm good at event management, or I'm good at engineering, or I'm good at medicine. And find a way to connect that to the sports industry, and 100% you will get a connection, because the industry is just like any other industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you so much for that insight again, Jonathan. And I have received couple of questions. So what I'll do is, like, because some of those questions are already kind of would get covered through my questions, but I'll try to club the audience question with mine as well. So the next one is like, Samay has asked, what are the different courses if someone wants to pursue something related to sports management. But I'll park that question, and maybe like I'll first put my question and then you can give a club response there. So
Sure.
my question to you is it better to pursue a general degree and then specialize in sports, maybe through some courses, assignments, summer programs, internships, or to focus on a sports specific degree from the start itself?
Okay. So this opinion, this when you speak to different people will have different opinions on this particular question. But I'm going to give you my response. And before I give you my response, just remind you of the context I'm coming from, right?
Sure.
I've been in the industry for 16 years. I have been fortunate where I'm in a position to have hired, I think the number right now would probably be close to 50 or 60 individuals myself. Like I work for a company and I've hired somebody to work in the team. So I've hired about 4 or 5 dozen people, and I've worked in the industry for 16 years. I have a lot of my industry peers and colleagues and acquaintances are all in decisions of power where they are like either CEOs or CFOs, CMOs, and they or head of HR, for example. The general consensus is that it is much, much better to do a specific degree and then find a way to connect that specific degree to the sports industry. And I'll give you an example of this, right? In the past 1 year over a year and a half that I've been at Mumbai City FC, I have hired 4 people and I'm going to hire another 2 more.
Okay.
Almost none of them are people, not almost none of them. Yeah, one of them. So out of the 5, and hopefully, out of the 6 people, 5 of them do not have sports management degrees.
Okay.
And I'm not even looking for the sports management degree. So I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
For our company, we hired a legal person. So our legal counsel was hired.
Yeah.
I did not care whether this person had a sports management degree or not. What I cared about is, does this person know the law?
Mm-hmm.
And that's very critical, right? Now, an added advantage here is something you mentioned at the start of, during your intro, which is, this is a person who is very, very passionate about sport.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he always knew he wanted to do law. So he went and did law. So he became a lawyer, right? Now, in law, you can specialize after you finish your graduation degree. So when you do your master's in law, you can specialize in the field that you specifically want to work in. So criminal law, real estate law, corporate law, XYZ, XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
For sports management, it is primarily corporate law, because what did I say at the start? Sports industry is just like any other industry. So sports companies are just like any other company. So the focus is primarily corporate law. But within corporate law also, there are unique courses that are available specifically for sports law. Now, why is that? Because a lot of sports law is also determined by the driving of federations. So the federations so the sports federation, the Olympic Council, they also create their own bylaws which work within the law, but they also create their bylaws. So what these courses that are specified or specialized in sports management do is they focus on, they teach you and compile all this information that you get around the world and teach you in one course how to apply your legal degree into sport. Right. So now you take that same example and take it, for example, I hired somebody who is the CFO of our company. Again, the same logic, finance. But interestingly enough, this person is not even passionate about sport. In fact, she's a very, very sharp young girl. And the only thing she's passionate about is RCB. She loves cricket and she's passionate about RCB. But she doesn't know much about any other sport. But it didn't matter, because she's very, very good at her job, which is being a finance person. Similarly, we are hiring somebody for PR and communications. Again, the idea is do a master's in PR and communications. And then if you have a passion for, like if 2 people come to me and both of them are equally good, right? Everything is the same. They have the same degrees, they have the same experience, XYZ. If
Mm-hmm.
one person has passion for sport, I will hire the person with passion for sport. But remember, the reason they got here was not because of the passion of sport, is because everything else is the same. They are just as good as any other candidate in the market. Now, similarly, when I'm hiring a social media executive, I want somebody who has a degree in marketing because they understand marketing. But
Mm-hmm.
if I get 5 candidates, all of whom have the same degree in marketing, and one of them happens to be somebody who's interested in sport or passionate about sport, and maybe even has worked in a previous sports company, I will hire that person.
Mm-hmm.
The For me personally, and based on a lot of conversations I've had with people in the industry who hire, they almost always prefer somebody who's done a specialized degree and
Mm-hmm.
joins the sports industry, or like you said, does summer programs or short-term internships, or does an online program which just helps them understand, I have this degree which is a specialized degree, how does this degree apply in the sports industry?
Mm-hmm.
And that is my very, very strong preference and personal preference.
Absolutely. I think you touched upon this point very rightly, because this is what I have come to realize through different conversations. Like, this is kind of a misconception where if a student wants to do something in the sports industry, they think of getting into a sports management course, right? Just straight away. That's their first thought somehow. But I feel like this response from your end would definitely give them a food for thought, and they can really try to do a specialization in a unique field itself, like be it finance, legal, operations, whatsoever, and application in the sports industry per se. Great.
And one thing I want to add here, Surbi, for the benefit of the crowd, it's when you think about what it is that you have to do, it's very simple. Why don't you just go on LinkedIn or any of these job sites? And this is, of course, you can do with the help of your parents if you're not comfortable, navigating some of these sites. You just go on these websites, look for your dream job, right? Let's say you want to be, I know, for example, a young boy and a young girl who both were interns with us last year. They want to build a career in sports analytics. So all you have to do is sports analyst for football team. Just go online, and there are probably football teams or football or sports organizations that have these job postings on LinkedIn, and you scroll down to the qualifications. Very rarely, very, very, very rarely will you see sports management only as a qualification. So you'll almost always see bachelor's in, let's say, for example, analytics, a bachelor's or a master's in data analytics, bachelor's or master's in sports management is desirable. But the prime focus is data analytics. That's the focus. So all you have to do is just go back. We hired. There was a company that I know, a friend's company, who hired what they call a chief strategy officer, basically business strategy, how to drive the company forward, because they had achieved a certain target in sales and they wanted to go from, let's say, earning 10 crores to earning 100 crores, which requires a massive strategy. The person he ended up hiring, who was, by the way, a huge fan, sports fan, passionate sports fan, that person has a master's from the Indian School of Business.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like he did a sports management degree. He got hired because he was from the Indian School of Business. And Indian School of Business is one of the top business management schools in the world that teaches business strategy. So his passion was great, but his passion didn't get him there. His degree at the ISB got him there. So that's where you need to think about it, and that's the way you frame. And one last thing I'll say over here, because this is an actually important part, and it ties in a lot of the other questions, by the way. The sports industry is a very competitive industry when it comes to getting a job, right? The sports industry is today where the tech industry in India was maybe 15, 20 years back, where there were few jobs and everybody wanted those jobs, right? What happens is, in the first couple of years after you finish your graduation, if for whatever reason you do not get the job that you wanted, or you don't start on that path, at the very least, you have a degree that can be applied in any other industry. So you can get another job. But if you get a sports management degree and you don't get the job that you would hoped that you would, you can't go into a let's say a car company and say, I want, let's say you want a marketing job at the car company, and you go to the car company and say, I want a marketing job here. The car company say, oh, have you done a master's in marketing or a bachelor's in marketing? You say, no, I've done a bachelor's in sports management. And the car company will be like, what can I do with you with sports management? It's actually sports management degrees to some extent, and we'll come to that question later, make sense in the sports industry. But in any other industry, God forbid, if you don't get that opportunity and you want to start your career in another industry and then transit or pivot to the sports industry, you will get, unfortunately, and I don't mean to be harsh, but you will get zero jobs. So it's almost always better to do a generic degree, do it well, and then find a way to connect that to the sports industry.
Great. I think all good points. So again, the key takeaway from your response is, which is like one great tip, go to LinkedIn or other job portals, take a look at as you said, your dream job or any other kind of, and this is applicable not only for careers in sports as such, but to any career. Go and see what is the job description, what is the degree requirement or courses requirement that can give you the most authentic information as such. So that's the one key takeaway. Second takeaway is to do something wherein you can have a fallback plan or plan B as well, right? And the third is like, try to have, be it in the form of degree or experience, have some kind of transferable skills as well, which could be applied to other industry, so that whatever happens to that industry, right now you mentioned that sports industry is a competitive industry, but
बाल, क्योंकि मेरे पास अगर समझ लो 1000 बाल है ना, मेरे रोज के 200 गिर जाते, फिर अगले
Miss Shruti,
फिर गिर जाते, और केमिकल ट्रीटमेंट भी कराती हूँ ना मैं इसके लिए.
Sorry, I just muted her, I think.
No worries.
Realize that. Okay, so third point was having transferable skills per se.
100%. Yeah. Those are all accurate summaries, Surbi.
So now I'll try to take one question from audience as well. And this is, I think that's why she might have unmuted herself. This is from Shruti. I think she's asking for her child. Mm-hmm. By what age should we start planning a sports career for a child? My son is 15-year-old, inclined highly towards sports.
Okay. So, Mrs. Shruti, I'm not certain when you say sports career, are you referring to a professional career where the child is playing the sport? Or are you referring to a career where the child has the ability to work in the sports industry? So I'm going to address the first one very, very briefly, and then I'll address the second part, because that's the second aspect is what we are here to discuss. With regards to being a professional athlete, if your son is already playing a particular sport, and he's 15 right now, the best thing to do is, if you want him to turn into a professional player, is to speak to a coach whose job it is to create professional players, and not just your high school coach or a college coach. Ideally, you want to speak to a pro coach, somebody who works with the professional players. So I don't know what sport it is that your son is playing, but you want to talk to a professional coach to see, analyze your son and say, okay, this is him, this is his talent. Do you think he has potential to play professional sport? And if you feel as a mother you want to give more opportunities, you can probably speak to 2 or 3 different coaches, but then you take the consensus answer and you decide. If the consensus, let's say 2 or 3 coaches say, I think he has potential, then you can move ahead. But if 2 or 3 coaches say that I don't think your son has the potential, then it's time to start thinking of, okay, let him play sport, let him continue, because that's what brings him joy. Because playing sport brings us joy, right? All of us love playing sport. And that's a good habit to have, because he will stay fit, he will stay sharp in the mind, he will stay healthy in the body. and it will be a habit he will carry on till he's 40, 50, 60, 70. There are people, I sometimes go to play basketball on my local court, and there are a couple of 70-year-old uncles who come and play there, right? So that's a good habit to have. Coming to a career in sport, that is something very related to my previous question, which is, if you're asking me how soon should we prepare for that, the answer is very simple. How soon are you preparing for his career in general? So assuming sports was not an option, right? What were you already thinking for him? So were you thinking he would become a doctor? Would you think he would become an engineer? Would he become an accountant? Would he become a presenter? Would he do marketing? Would he do sales? Would he become a scientist in the sense data analytics? I'm sure there is something that already interests him. And as a mother, you might already have a sense of it because mothers know everything. Children, don't ever hide anything from your mother. I can assure you that you can try as hard as you want, but your mother will always know everything. My mother has passed away now, but there were secrets my mother told me when I grew up as an adult. She's like, by the way, do you remember when you were 13 and you did this? I'm like 13 years old. So don't hide anything from your mothers. But on a serious note, there's already something that your son might be inclined to do. There is some passion he has. Maybe he likes numbers. Maybe he likes organizing stuff. Find out how his current skill set and his current natural proclivity. Proclivity means the desire to study something, right? He may like a subject. Find out what that subject is and find out how that can be connected to the sports industry. And you can start even at 15. You can start at 16. But the summary, the core of my response there is, the earlier the better. Always, the earlier you start, the better it is. Like, I mean, Surbhi's first slide is a great example, right? When we were in college, and I'm old enough, I'm 40 now. When we were in college, we started thinking about, when I was in school, we started thinking about college in 12th standard. Nowadays, there are students thinking of college from the 7th, 8th standard. You need to prepare that much, right? So you can start as soon as possible. Just find out what are the subjects he loves and what is his natural desire, and find a way that that natural desire or that subject is applicable in the sports industry.
So, Jonathan, she has put in some additional comments from her
Sure.
side. She is saying that her son is extremely good with cricket and football in terms of playing with good techniques and movement. Where can we find these pro coaches?
Sure. See, I mean, can she respond and tell me which city she is in? Which city are you based in?
So I have given her rights to really go on and speak, because that
She can
might
just,
be
even if she can type it, is fine.
okay.
So the idea is, when you, whichever city, and you can please interrupt me if she types out a city in the middle, Surbhi, but
Mumbai Mulund.
she's based in Mumbai. Okay. So perfect, right? So in Mumbai, for example, all you have to do is go to some of these top level academies that are either in in Dadar or in town, in Cooperage. You can just basically Google any of these top, you just say top cricket academies. You do some research online on who are the coaches for the current cricketers. So for example, I'm not a big cricket fan, so I unfortunately don't have a great answer for you in terms of where to find these academies, but I'll give you an example, right? One of the coaches who discovered Rohit Sharma. Of course, Rohit Sharma had many coaches along the way, but one of the coaches who discovered him was a gentleman by the name of Dinesh Lad, who I believe is in Borivali, if I'm not mistaken. He's in a school in Borivali. Now, he's a gentleman who was one of the few gentlemen who had guided Rohit Sharma, for all you cricket fans. And this is a story. The reason I know this is because this is a story we did for Nation of Sport.
Okay.
So, a lot of people may not know this, but Rohit Sharma started off his career when he was 8 or 9 or whatever it is. He started off his career as an off spinner. Okay. And it was at one particular game that the coach, he had just moved academies, and this coach had said, listen, I think you have good batting technique. Why don't you start for this one game that we played? And he started, and I think he scored some 60 or 70 runs at the age of 10 or 11. And he started to like that, and the coach decided to use him there. And today, see, Rohit Sharma is one of the greatest batsmen in the history of cricket, because that coach decided to turn him from a bowler into a batsman. So it's very critical to find that coach, and fortunately, because Mumbai is such a large cricketing hub, they are all over the place. So I know, for example, Dilip Vengsakar has an academy. I believe even Mr. Gavaskar has an academy, or his son has an academy in Bombay. So there are a lot of these cricketers and cricketing coaches. You'll have to do your own research. Unfortunately, I don't have too many names in that space because cricket is not my forte. But with regards to football, that's something I can tell you that Mumbai City FC. So if you follow us on Instagram, Mumbai City FC will hold an open trials for under 15 players. So the dates are still not out, but it will be announced on our social media. So follow us on social media and if there are any other similar questions with regards to football, just follow us on social media. You will see at some point of time we'll announce open trials for under 15s, and the idea is to show up for these open trials, try out, and our coaches will scout you. If you have the ability, you get into the academy. If you don't, we will say sorry, but maybe next time. And there are lots of other football academies. I was talking about Mumbai City FC, but there is BFC, there is Bangalore, there's Barcelona FC, FC Barcelona, there is soccer schools, there is the D'Souza Academy, lots of football academies, and a lot of them have top coaches. So you just have to find a good football academy and just have your son try out for them.
Thank you, Jonathan. She has other follow-up question as well. But Shruti, the scope of our session today is non-athletic careers. So I hope you got some insights, but we will try to take the other questions at a later point of time, because again, that is related to the athletic side of sports per se.
So, I mean, just for the other parents as well, I do work in the sports industry. I do have some perspective on what it would take to build an athletic career. But I don't think I can assure you that I'm not the right person to have that conversation. I can talk about everything that happens off the field. On the field careers and the ability of a child, unfortunately, if you show me two boys and they play football, I will not be able to tell you who will make it and who will not make it. Right. So unfortunately, I'm not the right person to have that conversation. But anything non-athletic careers, happy to have that conversation.
Okay. With that note, I know we are kind of on time, or rather exceeded on time, but there were few other questions which let's try to cover in say 5-10 minutes. And if the audience is okay to stay on for a couple of more minutes, that would be highly appreciated. I can tell you the questions which we are going to ask would definitely give you good insights into it. So let's move on. So now my next question is, how is the job market in the sports industry, particularly in India? So are there full-time positions? Is that a common thing, or are jobs mostly contractual during the league season or tournaments per se? And other question is, if you know about it, what types of global opportunities are available within the sports industry when it comes to non-athletic careers?
Sure. So the answer to the second question is very simple, which is the opportunities that are available in India are also available globally. It's very similar. It's just that globally there might be more opportunities because in the West, which is the US, Australia, Europe, even to some extent Southeast Asia, those industries have been growing for many years, right? The UK, for example, is a 100-year-old sports industry. In India, the sports industry is essentially just about 16 or 17 years old. Fundamentally, when you think about it, the sports industry started with the start of the IPL. Not that it did not exist before that. There were people who had sports careers, but it was largely unorganized. With the IPL came a lot of professionalism in the management of sport. And that's why the concept sports management. So this effectively, the sports industry is about 16 years old in India, right? Now, coming to roles that are available, there are definitely far more contractual and seasonal roles available, because what happens is when you're in the season, the number of things to be done increases significantly. So you need at the IPL stadiums, for example, you need about 250 to 300 staff just to manage the stadium, right? At these large stadiums. In a stadium like Motera Stadium or the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, that requires close to over 2,000 people to manage, right? But those 2,000 people don't have a job for the rest of the year after the IPL ends. So from the time the IPL starts to the time the IPL ends, which is about 3 months, they can get jobs or they can get contractual work. So there are more contractual jobs available. What's interesting though is because the sports calendar is year-round in India right now, right? It's not everything happens. So you have IPL gets over, then you have the Kabaddi League. Kabaddi League gets over, then you have the Indian Super League. Indian Super League gets over, then you have the Volleyball League. Volleyball League gets over, then you have Ultimate Table Tennis. Then that will get over, then there'll be another cricket tournament. So there's a 12-month sports career right now. So when you have contractual jobs, what is a very typical career in the events and operations spaces? You get a job in the season, and then you jump from league to league. Depending if you're good, people will actually call you and they'll say, "Hey, listen, I have a friend who worked with you at the IPL. They really like your work. Come and work with me at the ISL." So that's how it works. The industry talks to each other a lot, and because the industry is still quite small, people who are good at their job, they get noticed very, very easily. So you tend to move around a lot. So I would say start with maybe 2-3 leagues a year, then get to a point in the first year. Then you get to a point where you're doing year-round leagues in the second year, maybe third year. And by then, if you've been in the industry for about 2-3 years, and if you're good at your job, first of all, if you're really good at your job, you'll get a full-time offer immediately. Right? They'll automatically see you and they'll say, we don't want to lose this person. We don't want to lose this resource. You will get a full-time offer at the end of the season. And I've done that before, so I know that.
Okay.
But if let's say you're not at the top of the pack, but you're good, you will get regular work and do this for about 2-3 years. And maybe by the third year, maybe early fourth year, you will get a full-time role. And by then you will be. So there are more contractual roles than full-time roles, but there are also quite a few full-time roles available as well. And the global industry and the Indian industry are relatively the same.
Got it. Thank you so much. So now I'll move on to my next question, which is like twofold question, which is pertaining to the advice, which firstly you would give to parents who might be hesitant about their child pursuing a career in the sports industry. And secondly, advice to the students who are interested in being part of this industry, but still uncertain about pursuing a career.
Sure. Now, with regards to I'll answer the children first because that's a little simpler, right? For the children, if you have a desire to work in the sports industry, I think most of the answers I've already given you earlier, right? Find out what you're naturally drawn towards, find out what subjects you like. And what you have to do is, let's assume the sports industry did not exist. If the sports industry did not exist, what would you do? What is the career you would choose? And whatever that career is, essentially find out how that career fits in the sports industry. Very simple. There is no hesitation. There's no need for hesitation. Now, coming to the parents, and this response also kind of speaks to the kids as well. What are some reasons for hesitation, right? One is, and this is because I'm an Indian and I have Indian parents, I understand the feelings of Indian parents. What are your at the core, what are your key concerns? Your key concerns are, can my child have a good education in this space? Can my child earn a living in this space? And can my child have a career and, quote unquote, be settled in this space? And the answer to all these three is yes, right? Very simple. But if you want to give a little bit of context, can your child have a good education in this space? Go back to my earlier answer, which is find a generic high quality degree and let your kid get educated in that degree, and then find a way to attach that degree to the sports industry. So automatically, do the same exercise that I told the kids to. Assume there was no sports industry. What would you get your child to do? And then get your child to do that. And then when your child has done that degree or has done that course, find a way how that course applies to the sports industry. Very simple. So automatically your kid has a good degree? Second is, will they be able to earn a decent living? Right now, the answer is yes. 5 years back, 10 years back, 15 years back, the answer was no. Keep in mind, though, that the sports industry does not pay as much as, let's say, some other highly paying traditional industries, right? So whether it's engineering or becoming a doctor or becoming, an accountant, some of those highly paying traditional jobs. However, let's say your child became a doctor or an engineer or an accountant or a lawyer or an HR specialist. When they join the sports industry, it's not like the sports industry will pay them less money. They will pay them as much money as they would, I would say not as much, they would pay them probably 20 or 30% less than they would pay if this person had, let's say, joined a hospital, or they had joined a large industry factory, or they had joined a large CA firm, right? So comparatively, maybe about 20 to 30% less. But, and this is very critical here, right? The kind of experiences that your child will have in the sports industry, you can have all the money in the world and you will not be able to have those experiences at all if you are working in the traditional industry. And I'll give you a personal example, right? In school and college, I was a nerd. So I liked accounts. I would do accounts a lot. And I had a friend of mine who was the captain of his basketball team. In fact, my love for basketball came through him. Like I started to play basketball because of him, but I was terrible at it. Like I was horrible at basketball compared to him. Like he could have probably played high-level college, probably even gone to play on the Indian national team if he had, continued to pursue that path. Now he's a basketball player. I'm the nerd. He passed all his accounts exams because of me, because I taught him, the accounts aspects. Here's what is interesting. We both passed out college in 2003. 10 years later, I was in the US at the NBA All-Star Game, which is the biggest NBA event in the world. Mm-hmm. And I was hanging out and talking to these NBA players, and I met a lot of NBA journalists who I grew up reading. I got to attend the All-Star Game, and for that experience, all I had to do was pay for the tickets because I had gone there as a journalist, but I got all this other experience for free. And he was sitting at home, and he had chose to go into the finance industry, which is ironic. So he is sitting at home. I mean, I don't mind sharing this, but he was making probably 2x or 3x what I was earning in terms of salary. Not like I was earning a bad salary. I was earning a comfortable salary, but his salary was 3 or 4 times more. He had a really nice car, great house, so on and so forth. But he was jealous of me because I was having an experience. He could have all the money in the world and he could not have the experience that I was having. He could, let's say he even had $100,000 to pay and attend the game. I was not just attending the game. I was in the backside, in the back room, hanging with the players. I was walking around, and here's Kevin Durant, and here's Russell Westbrook, and here's James Harden, and we were just hanging out. And you could have all the money in the world, and you could not have that experience. I'll give you another quick experience with cricket. So I have a friend of mine who is working now in cricket. He's working in the BCCI. But let's say about 10 years back, he was a junior. He was just starting out his career. This is what he was doing at the IPL game, by the way. His job was to take water crates from one place to another place. That was his job 10 years back. That was the role he had. And it was a seasonal contractual role. And one day, let's say one day before the match, they were doing this preparation. And they were quite tired, and they were having lunch, and they were sitting in a room, and they were watching a game on television. It was a cricket game on television. And there were about 10 or 12 people just hanging out. It was a lot of this temporary staff. There were some senior staff. They had all just finished lunch and they were just taking it easy. So 1:30, 1:45 in the evening. And the door to the room was at the back. And he was sitting and watching TV in the front. And they were all chatting. They were talking about the game. Acha, ye yaar kya kyun mara isne aisa shot, ye wo falana dimkana. And the door opened and nobody bothered to turn back and look. Because it must have been somebody from the staff only. So they were talking and continuing, and that door closed. That person sat down, and he was sitting, and he was telling me the story. He's like, that person was ended up sitting in a chair right behind him because that was the chair that was empty. And they were talking, and suddenly something happened and everybody was sharing an opinion on what happened on the screen. And this person behind him said, अरे उसने ऐसा shot मारना चाहिए, उसको ऐसा shot मारना चाहिए था. And this friend of mine is like, this voice is very familiar. Like, I've heard this voice before. So that person has been sitting there for 25 minutes. Nobody knows, like, he doesn't know what's happening. He turns, not 25 minutes, but 10 minutes. He turns around and looks, and who's sitting there? None other than the great Sachin Tendulkar was literally randomly sitting with a bunch of staff who are like, they're doing temporary jobs at the Wankhede Stadium, and they're watching TV. It's lunch. Everybody's relaxed. Nobody cares. And Sachin Tendulkar comes and just sits and watches cricket.
Wow.
Now, that's what I'm saying. This kind of experience you can only get if you work in sport. You can be the biggest bank manager and the biggest doctor and the biggest this in the world. But at that age, to get that experience, you can only get it in sport. So it's important for parents to understand that while the sports industry may not pay your child on par with other industries, I'm saying the difference is not massive. Let's say another career pays you 1 lakh. This career will pay you 70,000 or 75,000. But that experience that your child can get by getting access to these kind of experiences is unparalleled. Like, there is no experience, right? And the last question, which is the thing that bothers most parents, is will they be able to build a long career? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Because the sports industry is still very new. It's only 15 years old. The tech industry, for example, is 24 years old. It started around 2099, 2000 when the tech boom happened, right? The car industry or the F&B industry is hundreds of years old. It started with the hotels being built. The sports industry is just 15 years old, which means we have a long way to go. Surbi put up a number at the start of the slide which said that India sports industry is $2 billion. Well, the US industry, which is where we aim to go, or the UK industry, which is where we aim to go, is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. So you imagine we have to go from $2 billion to hundreds of billions of dollars. So no matter who takes up a career, you have a long career ahead if you stay consistent and you stay patient. So I hope that answers that question, but you have nothing to worry with the sports industry.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I am pretty sure that this will be a very, very helpful insight for the parents and students particularly. And it's, in a way, you have kind of busted few of the common myths which were related to this industry. So, well, thank you so much for all your responses. I know we have taken a couple of minutes longer, but majority of the audience is still there. I am pretty sure they got all the insights which they were looking for. We had a lot other questions as well, but unfortunately, we have to come to a closure now. But thank you once again to you, Jonathan, and to our audience as well. On that note, I would want to close the session. Have a good Sunday, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was great having you here, Jonathan.
Same here. Thank you.
Okay, have a good one. Bye.
Bye.